All right, so thanks everybody. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah? Okay, good. So thanks everybody for coming out and, thank you for inviting me. My name is Bill Maurer, and I am the Director of Online Programs for an organization called Best Buddies International, as Bart just mentioned. And I've had the pleasure of working with PROIDEA here in Warsaw over about the last year and a half, almost 2 years, building out a mobile app for our organization. And I should preface this by saying that I'm not really a technical person. I'm not a developer, not a designer, not a coder. I've messed around with code, and broken things quite often. But it's really I'm here more as someone who is coming from the client side, right? I am someone who would be coming to a designer, to a developer, and saying, I would like you to do some work for us. I'm happy to be invited out to this, and I wanted to give this talk because I've been with the organization for a decade and a half now, about 16 years, and we've got some tech ambitions, right? We've done a few things here and there where we tried to do something with the web, we tried to do something else with the web, and they were okay, but maybe the not as thought through as they could have been, right? And the thing that I really think was good and successful that made this particular collaboration very successful was that there was a holistic approach that was taken by PROIDEA towards the design process and towards developing the app. And I think that that's very important because coming from nonprofit, one of the main concerns is always cost. We're always looking for the cheapest thing, and that may or may not be the best thing. But anyway, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. So first, just to start off, Best Buddies, we are a nonprofit that builds social inclusion for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We are based in the United States, but we're actually in over 50 countries around the world. And our mission statement is to establish a global volunteer movement that creates opportunities for one-to-one friendships, integrated employment, and leadership development for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So that makes perfect sense, right? That you guys know what we do because anyway, I feel like the mission statement is a lot of words, but the easiest way to sort of see what we do is maybe just a quick video.
Breakfast is ready.
Yes, you can go bowling on Friday. Yes, of course. Thank you, Allie. And tell Amber I love her.
Okay, so that's what we do. What we're all about is building inclusion, right? So it's making sure that people with disabilities, people who don't have disabilities, really just come together and have the opportunity, all the same opportunities, and to interact with each other. And it's been really exciting for me being here and going to a lot of these sessions that focus on user experience and the UX design and accessibility, because ultimately those things are about inclusion as well, right? We want to make sure that as a user of a mobile application or even with the web, that the experience works for everyone, that everyone can be included, and just it's really inclusion doesn't really include just, as the video kind of showed, these tangible things. It's also people online and increasingly people using their phones, right? So technology has this incredible capacity to build community. But in order to maximize that potential, there needs to be design. It needs to be, thoughtful. So, all right. So if just we're gonna take a little step back just for a little context. I was, I don't know, how many of you guys know, is Simpsons a thing here? I don't even know. But anyway, so I was just for some reason this talk reminded me of an episode from The Simpsons, which to me, it doesn't seem like it's that long ago, but it turns out that it's actually like almost 20 years ago that this happened. So it's very relevant, obviously. So essentially, there is Homer Simpson. He discovered this thing called the internet, and everyone was hopping on. It was the hot new thing, right? This is about 1998, before the first the .com crash. Back then people were just hopping on the bandwagon, and everyone needed to do something on the web. Homer created a fake company, and eventually it was dismantled by Bill Gates and his thugs. But it sort of was. It was both prescient in the sense that there was sort of this impending collapse of the sort of early internet culture. But what I think they missed was that in the long term, the things that were happening back then really were, long-term changes for that were going to have long-term, deep impacts on all of our lives, right? So, because now like all of these, they're all the brands that started around then or just after then. These are the most pervasive brands, the most pervasive companies that we essentially run our lives through. So, I guess the issue is, do you want to be, so back then there was the issue with the internet, and people were hopping on the bandwagon. Some people had issues. They their companies went out of business, but the people who got in and they stayed in, they're doing pretty well now, and no one wants to be the person that misses the boat, right? So this is just for context. But so fast forward to maybe a few years ago, I think we were at that point with mobile apps as well, right? Everyone says, oh, I need a mobile app. I run a company, I run an organization, I need a mobile app. The new reality is that things are moving in that direction. Everyone wants a mobile app. And no one wants to be left behind. But here's the question: Is this just another fad that people are getting involved with? Is this something that everyone needs to have an app, or is it something where maybe there's some thoughtful consideration that needs to happen, right? As mobile app designers, you guys understand that there are good use cases for apps, and then there are maybe not so good use cases. And I think that that's something that you guys just have a sense for. Whereas on the client side, we maybe are a little bit we don't quite understand that as well as you guys do. So I think that an app is supposed to solve a problem or provide added value, and that's sort of the same for every business. But I think in a lot of cases, there's an additional element of status, of prestige. People want to have an app just because it's a thing you're supposed to do, right? So now, getting to nonprofits specifically. So why can building a mobile app for a nonprofit be worthwhile? And I think the answer to that is absolutely yes. You can build a nonprofit, an app for a nonprofit, and it can and will be worthwhile. But I think sometimes it might require a little bit of creativity and thought to make sure that what you're doing is actually, beneficial to the users and actually adds value. Most nonprofits are focused on fundraising, right? That's actually, at least in the United States, I'm not sure if that's different here, but fundraising is a very, very big element. It's honestly, aside from actually doing what we do, it's probably the thing we think about the most. But here's the thing, we don't need apps to be built, the custom apps to be built for fundraising, because there are platforms upon platforms upon platforms that do donations, that do event planning. I mean, honestly, it makes more sense in a lot of cases to leverage the existing platforms than to build something custom that is just going to do the same thing and probably do it not as well as the sort of the state of the art platforms. So this is one area where I think there are certainly use cases where you can get creative. I know there are some organizations where you can actually identify places to donate your money, right? And the app will actually help identify those outlets. But as an individual organization, it's really not something I think that is a very fertile ground for new app development. So the really if there's an obvious use case for a given nonprofit organization, that's great, right? If you could walk into the meeting, and you could talk to the client, and they'll have a good plan. They'll know exactly what they want, and it'll make perfect sense, and that's great. The fear, though, is that in a lot of cases that may not be the case, right? The client may be, and I'm getting a little bit of ahead of ourselves here, but I would say that as a client, we were maybe not so thoughtful as far as what we wanted, and this became part of the process. And I think it's always it's the thing to realize, I guess, is that as an organization, there is some pressure just because what's in the air, because the trends. People are like, hey, you should do an app. We've got an app. Everyone needs an app, right? So there's sort of pressure just to do an app for the sake of doing an app. But what I would argue is that's a really bad idea, because, well, it's a bad idea because you're really just wasting money. And so the consideration here is if you're a for-profit company and you make a bad business decision to invest a lot of resources in a mobile app and it doesn't work, that's on you. It's bad, but you can potentially figure out a way around it. And that's part of the business. If you don't, you go out of business. But the stakes with a nonprofit is, presumably you believe strongly in your mission, right? That you think that what you're doing is important. So being flippant with your spending and throwing a lot of money at a potentially really expensive project that really doesn't add any value to your customers or to the organization, is a pretty bad idea. So, as a mobile developer, designer, that sort of puts you all in maybe a bit of a quandary, right? A moral quandary. It's good to have more business, right? You want to have more business. But you don't want to be an enabler of the misappropriation of funds, right? You don't want to basically enable the company a nonprofit to go bust or whatever because they're wasting their money. So I think that there is a little bit, as a developer, is a little bit of a sort of an ethical, a little bit of a calculation that you need to make whether you think it's a good idea to continue with the project, because ultimately, I think you guys are going to have a much better sense of whether or not the project is worthwhile than we as clients, because our judgment may be clouded by this rush to build an app, this sort of the swell of the tide that's pushing us in that direction. All right. Okay, so getting back to Best Buddies. So we're gonna do a little history lesson. I feel like I've just been going back in time, over and over. But in any case, Best Buddies, we make friendships. That's what we do. We do build inclusion. But we're not a tech company. We're not really all that tech savvy. So, back when I first started, around 2000, we didn't even have email addresses, right? As an organization, we would actually, when we came on staff, we would go to like Hotmail or Yahoo, create a free account, and we would just email people and say, "I'm Bill from Best Buddies," and we'd have to hope that people realized that we were not lying. And then, a couple years later, we got some alias accounts where, we could put something on our business cards, but when we replied to people, we'd still be sending from Hotmail or Yahoo. So, it was a little bit dodgy, right? But here's the thing: we learned, and now we are in the cloud, right? Like everybody, we're on Office 365, and it's been delightful. So there's a progression. We're kind of getting with the times, and we're able to learn from things that we've done in the past. So another thing that happened, I guess, throughout the first decade of my work at Best Buddies, we collect a lot of data. We have about 100,000 people around the United States every year who participate in our programs, and we were collecting paper membership applications, and people were mailing them to us, these giant boxes, and it was very, very inefficient, right? And all that paper now has been thrown out, and I don't think it ever got digitized, so it was all for naught in the end. But about 8 years ago, I oversaw a project to move all of our offline forms online, so we now collect all that information digitally. And we've actually been using that information to keep track of all our members, and this is actually the database we've used to build our mobile app off of. So again, it took us a little while, but eventually we figured out where we were going. Okay, and so another quick thing that we've done in the past, technology-wise, is that right around the same time as the Homer Simpson reference from earlier, we launched a program called eBuddies, which is an email pen pal program. It was funded by actually some .com money back in the day, and it actually works pretty well. And so it's a simple concept. We match a person with IDD with a person without. They email each other, for whatever reason, from a marketing perspective, we kind of got a little carried away. We were really excited about it, so we branded it as being this cutting edge, innovative program. Using all kinds of tech lingo. I think we used we talked about bridging the digital divide and creating a community of friendship in cyberspace. We were very, very excited about being tech savvy, when really all we were doing was we had created a mechanism for people to meet on the internet and email each other. But in any case, this program actually worked out very well, and it's still ongoing. We've got members all around the world. I think we've served like 15,000 people, it's great. But so our second foray though into sort of tech stuff. How many of you guys recognize who this guy is? Let's see. Anybody? Really? Oh my goodness. Okay, so I'm really throwing out a bunch of dated references. So anyway, this is Tom from MySpace. MySpace Tom? No? Anybody? So anyway, back in the mid-aughts, before Facebook had taken over the world, MySpace was sort of the king, and before that it was Friendster, right? In any case, everyone at that point was like, we could do a social network for our organization, our community, our club, what have you. It was like the thing. And so we thought we could do that too. So there were open source, community building tools. You download them from the internet, you slap on a custom skin, invite your friends, profit, right? So it turned out that we didn't really have the expertise, or that we weren't providing the user experience that people wanted, and there was actually we got an initial influx of people. People were really excited about it, but then within 6 months it was taken over by spam bots. So and then I think within like a year or two it was totally mothballed. So this seems like it's not a great story for us, and it's not something we like to talk about all that much. But it was a good learning experience for us, right? Because we realized that maybe there were limits to sort of what we could do as a nonprofit by ourselves, right? Just like downloading open source software and maintaining ourselves. We realized that maybe that wasn't a good model for us because we're not necessarily the most tech savvy group. So, all right, so now we're getting almost to the present. Fast forward to 2015, and we really want to build an app because you know what? That's what everyone's doing. That's the thing that as a cool, hip, international nonprofit, we want to make sure that we're staying on top of things. So, we have some grand visions for this. We want it to be a combination of Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat. We wanted to do basically everything that those things did, but we don't want it to be like our initial attempt. I guess it was called Buddy for Life. Our social network was called Buddy for Life. We don't want it to be Buddy for Life 2.0. We want this one to be good. So at this point, we were very lucky to be introduced to PROIDEA. And over the course of the years through various projects, some that I mentioned, some that I haven't, I've worked with many web developers over the years. And, I haven't necessarily had bad experiences, but the thing that really impressed me with working with PROIDEA is that they really did approach it from both the design and the engineering side at the same time, right? Because I think usually we would find someone who had the technical expertise to just build the thing for us, but someone who didn't necessarily care all that much about the design aspect. So we would get an open source, community building software, and we'd pretty much use it as sort of like off the shelf because no one really cared about how to sort of optimize that experience for the users. So that was something that was a big change for us, and I think that ultimately it was something that made the experience much more fruitful. So we had some introductory meetings, and we were like, hey, so here's what we want to do. We wanted to do all the things that all the social media, these billion-dollar companies, we want to basically do what they do, but we want it to be cooler and just for us. They humored us, but they didn't necessarily start doing what they did. And what they did was that a couple of designers who are actually both in the room, you guys can point and laugh right here, Magda and Carolina, they came out to, we run a conference in Indiana every summer. About 2,500 student leaders from chapters all around the world come. They basically attend sessions. They learn how to run their chapters, and it's really just kind of a big best buddies party, right? So Carolina and Magda came, and they conducted focus groups. They surveyed, different. They surveyed our staff. They surveyed, some students, and they just sort of. They actually, rather than just taking our word for what we needed and what we wanted, they actually, they did a little bit of research, right? Which was awesome. That's the thing that I think is really the most valuable aspect of our partnership is that there was this level of thoughtfulness. Frankly, they had a design expertise and engineering expertise that we didn't have, and without that, we would have probably made some pretty silly decisions. So Magda and Carolina come back, and they draw up a design, and they come up with some recommendations. Their recommendations were basically, really, you want to narrow the focus. You need to identify your core audience. Think about how you're going to engage with those people. Are they going to want to use this? Who are these people? What are they using? Do they want to use this? And then, is what's going to actually add value for these people, right? You're actually looking at the people that are being affected and having this discussion. Because, honestly, we weren't thinking that. We just wanted a nap. And they were right. And so this was a hugely ambitious project that we had, and it got scaled down to a slightly less ambitious, but still ambitious project, but a more reasonable project, a more focused project. We didn't take all of the recommendations. I think there are probably some things we did that they would they would say were maybe not the best decisions. But here's the thing. We now have a mobile app that works on iOS and Android. I really like it. It looks great. Our members can share photos in an Instagram feed that can be shared to Facebook and other other social media platforms. It gives them access to chapter events, chapter calendars. They get notifications when something's happening in their area, and paperwork that used to be pulling teeth is now super simple for them to do from their phone when they have a spare 5 minutes. So, it really does add value, and it was scaled down from what we had previously. So all right. So here are some key considerations, I would say, as a developer. If you're approached by a nonprofit client who's interested in potentially engaging in building a mobile app, the things to think about are, is this actually going to add any value for the client's customers, right? Are they actually, is it going to be useful? Who is the audience? Is anyone going to use this? Best Buddies, we're fortunate because we have a sort of a captive audience of about 100,000 people who sign up for our programs every year, right? But that's not necessarily going to be the case for everybody. So and in a lot of cases, you can just leverage those existing platforms. You leverage your responsive website, and it's not, the answer isn't always going to be building out a mobile app. And then for the scope, you really want to try to narrow the focus down to what is the most important thing. And again, I think this is all stuff that you guys know, but I think that you need to be prepared when you're talking to someone on the client side that this is a thing that is going to happen. People are going to want to do everything, and you're going to need to help them cull it down to something that's maybe more focused and more reasonable. And then cost. I think that cost is always a big thing. And I think this is where a lot of nonprofits get themselves into trouble, is that we always go for the low bid. Like we're always excited to save money and get what we want for cheap. Or a lot of times we want to get it donated, which there's charity, but that may or may not be feasible for people who need to actually put food on the table. So I think you need to be upfront and make sure that when people enter into these conversations that they, the client, are aware of what the long-term costs are going to be. What is the maintenance? What is this going to be year over year? Because that's the kind of thing that we don't really, we as non-tech people don't even think about the fact that you have to pay for hosting on an ongoing basis for however long you've got your app going, right? So that's the kind of thing that needs to be. You have to speak very clearly, short, concise sentences, because we may not get it the first couple times. And then really the main thing is to not be shy about being an advocate for good design, for good project work, and being opinionated and saying, look, I think that what you're proposing is a bad idea, or it's a great idea. It might be a great idea, but I think that it's very important for you as a designer to speak freely and to be honest with your clients, because you don't want to get to a point where you're selling someone a product that is not what they want, and is going to underdeliver for them based on their expectations, which may be unrealistic. It's better to be honest and upfront, make sure that people are clear on what the expectations are and what the costs are going to be, because otherwise, you may not feel fulfilled at the end of the day, and your client's certainly not going to feel fulfilled, because they're going to feel like they didn't get what they wanted. So it's very important that you're clear up front. So, all right. So up to this point, I think I've done a pretty good job of making a case against ever working with a nonprofit, right? So you're probably wondering why would I do this? Because it sounds like it's a huge pain in the ass to work with nonprofits. But here's the thing. Working with a nonprofit can make a big difference. We are, by adding this app, we are creating all kinds of new, fun, lasting memories of, these great one-to-one interactions that are happening for years. They're going to happen for people's lifetimes. They're going to be able to take this, take their experiences that they're capturing in the app that we built, for the rest of their lives. And I can't speak for PROIDEA, but I hope they understand the impact that they made on our members, and they continue to make on our members. So I'm going to leave you with a quick story. This is actually about our eBuddies program, and you can see there are these two guys in the middle holding the T-shirt. That's Bill and Robert, and they were introduced to each other about 17 years ago through our eBuddies program. They're one of our probably first batch of matches, and they've been emailing ever since 2000. At this point, they're basically family. And this picture was taken a few years ago when I guess Bill on the left came up to New Hampshire, where Robert lives, and he brought his whole family, and they went to they got some pizza, and they had a great time. But here's the thing: they're basically family now through this this thing that we did, right? And here's what Bill said about his experience with eBuddies. So he says, eBuddies is a wonderful program that supports and promotes social interaction for people of all levels of intellectual and developmental disabilities. It's a community that values inclusion and celebrates diversity. It's a great way to give something of yourself that costs nothing, but a few moments of your time each week, yet will pay you back with priceless memories, great friendship, and the knowledge that you are helping someone feel a sense of equality and normalcy in their lives. And so yes, working with a nonprofit on building a mobile app, there might be a little bit of extra work that needs to go on, right? A little bit of extra effort that needs to happen, but the payoff in the end is going to be so much more. It's going to be so much more real. There's so much potential for impact that I would still encourage all of you to do so. So anyway, I guess that's about it. So all right.
Thank you, Bill. So do we have any questions here on the
So do you started as a paper program, yes? Just mails and meetings in chapters.
Wait, say again?
You started as a paper program, yes? Basically, no technology. So how did you do your website and your infrastructure? Well, did you learn any lessons from that?
So are you talking about this project in particular, or from the beginning? Yeah, so I feel like for us we've learned over time just by muddling through, right? So I think that when I came aboard when we first launched our eBuddies program, and our first website, I think our first website was built by someone who was an in-house, part-time web developer, and it was very not so pretty. We got a graphic design, a student actually, to design a template for us, our version 2 website, which was very cool. But there was also very loud, neon green colors and such, and it was. Looking back, we thought it was really cool, but looking back, maybe it wasn't so good looking. But in any case, I ended up, as someone who had no technical training or whatever, I ended up being the developer, the person who had to maintain the websites. And I think that the thing that I learned over time is sure, I can maintain a website, but it's really not a good idea because I'm doing a pretty lousy job of it. So the thing that I would say as a nonprofit is that my expertise, or my organization's expertise, is inclusion, is making friends. My expertise isn't building out websites, and I think that as much as we can, as much as reasonable, I think it is good to find people with expertise, often not even in-house people, actually finding contractors, developers, designers. I think as much as possible leveraging those resources is a good way to go.
Anyone else? Carolina, how about you going to tell us some anecdotes from your cooperation? Oh, Magda. I'm really curious. You know, I don't work at PROIDEA, but I'm curious about that, and probably the audience is also pretty curious about that. Okay, no pressure. Oh, we have a story. Great.
I don't have a story. I just wanted to say that when we, sorry, maybe Magda will add something. So I just wanted to say that when we came there to Indiana for this conference, we just learned and noticed that the whole Best Buddies is very into its mission, and we and are really stick to it. And yeah, can you confirm? For sure. And we've learned that this application is for sure will be very important and very useful. I don't know, maybe you can mention about this friendship update, and we really felt that this feature will be the most important for the buddies actually.
Yeah, no, and so Carolina talked about the friendship update, and I mentioned, I think, sort of in passing, the reporting that was like pulling teeth before. So every month, our buddy pairs, we call them buddy pairs when you match up a person with and without disabilities, we ask them to tell us what they did that month, right? And it used to be essentially a report. You'd have to log on to the computer, write out a report, and no one did it. But now, essentially, what we've done is we've built out a system where over the course of the month, as you're taking selfies at the movie theater, you can actually fill out your report on the fly by just taking pictures of yourself doing fun things. And at the end of the month, you've pretty much already done all the work. So it's not a big report. So that's an example of value added that was very, very, very specific to Best Buddies. That doesn't make sense to anyone else necessarily, but for our members, that was a huge add. And I think that was the kind of thing that, in our discussions, these guys were able to suss out as an area that we needed to focus on. So.
How many buddies do you have?
So I think this year we're at about 100,000 active members around the world. Yeah. So.
Are you guys also supporting the whole software, the whole system? Okay.
Yeah.
Is that like also a maintenance with that?
Yeah, that is a thing that's happening, and it's actually a topic of discussion. I think at some point, there could be something where we would actually take control of the app. Yeah. But right now we're still finishing up some final feature.
Cool. You have more questions? Yeah.
Did you consider open sourcing the application, because you said that you've got 100 buddies, so I think those buddies know other buddies who can be bored develop 100,000. So it's quite a lot of people, so they could have buddies who are bored developers who can do something after hours and help to maintain app or improve or add features or stuff like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't actually, really ever considered, opening it up. But, I mean, it's something we could certainly consider. I think that the specifics of the app are it's very custom to our organization, right? But that's not to say that there's not potential even within our organization, because we have our international affiliates, right? And really, this right now is focused on United States members, but it's something. Yeah, if we were to open source it, we could get people in Poland working on the Polish version, and that would be awesome.
So what about all the other online programs? What else do you have? What's like?
So the main online programs that we have, obviously the app is it's sort of online, but it's not really a program in itself. The main program that exists exclusively online is our eBuddies program. And as far as other online programs, a lot of it has to do with the data collection and managing. Aside from the app, we have another web portal interface for all of our chapters that they can access just via the web. So,
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Are you going to stay with us for the rest of the day?
Yeah, I'll
Great.
be here. So,
Thanks a lot.
all right. Thanks, Bart. Thanks, guys.